It's a
very straightforward question.
Because you're the person who would have called Nelson Mandela a terrorist while he was still in jail, and one person's terrorist is another person's freedom fighter.
I wouldn't have called him that.
For me to answer the question, yes, you would have. For me to answer the question, I have to be very professional, Pierce. For me to sit on the outside in Romania with no personal involvement in Israel Palestine, it's easy for me to say yes, it was an act of terror. However, if I was in Gaza, if I was in an open air prison, if my family had been annihilated by bombs from the sky, if everybody I knew had suffered the loss of a loved one, if I had no chance of any kind of freedom or democracy or standard of life, would I believe it was an act of terror, or would I believe it's an act of resistance against oppression? You have to be very careful how you answer these questions.
So what do you think?
I think I understand what happens when you take people and put them in such an inhumane condition. For anybody to sit and say that you're going to take people and put them in absolutely inhumane conditions and give them no standard of life, and they're not allowed to ever fight back, or they are terrorists.
But I can agree with you.
Anyone who does that is an amateur.
I can agree with you that the plight of the Palestinians for many decades has been absolutely shameful.
So what did we think was going to happen, Pierce?
No, nothing justifies what happened on October the 7th.
So what are they supposed to do?
Nothing.
So what are they supposed to do?
That was an act of medieval barbaric terrorism. Nothing justifies it.
Did they suffer acts of medieval?
Your attempt to try and equivocate.
Did they suffer acts of medieval barbaric terrorism before that date? Yes. And it's unfortunately an eye for an eye in this world.
Tell me,
I'm not condoning. I'm being a professional and answering to you why it happened. Give me one example.
Let me tell you the reality of the world. What Hamas did was an act of terror. An absolutely despicable act of terror, and should be called exactly what it is. And they are now demonstrably a terrorist group. That is why they were rightly prescribed that by the UK and America and other countries. And to try and pretend they're not makes you sound like Jeremy Corbyn. And I can't think of a worse insult to throw at you, right? So
I don't think me and Corbyn agree on that.
But I also think there are legitimate questions to come about the way Israel's responded. We can come to that. But I just want to ask you one more time. Is what Hamas did on October the 7th an act of terrorism?
I think, Pierce, it is peddling asininities for you to pretend that enslaving people...
So you sound like Jeremy Corbyn.
No, let me answer the question.
15 times he refused to answer the question.
Let me answer the question.
You're now up
I'm
to
not
about...
refusing.
You're now about 3 or 4.
If you look...
Are they a terror group or not?
They're one team's freedom fighter, and they're deemed a terrorist
What do
group.
you think?
I think that if you lock people in an open-air prison and steal their land, they're going to retaliate.
So they're not a terror group?
I think they're going to retaliate.
They're not a terror group?
One team's terrorist is another
Okay, we're now up to about 8. Are they a terror group?
And also, another thing I want to make clear to you, Pierce.
Only Jeremy Corbyn has done this.
Done what?
Refused to answer the question.
I think that what they are doing is seemingly deemed an act of terror by the people that the terror...
Don't use weaselly words.
They're not weaselly. Of course the Israelis think they're a terror group, and of course the Palestinians think they're freedom fighters. It's stupid that you're asking the question.
Most of the civilized world thinks they're a terror group who committed an act of terrorism. It's not difficult. What they did was an act of terrorism.
And I think that if Israel continues to conduct acts of terrorism on the Palestinian people, they're going to do nothing but strengthen the reaction.